And good evening. My name is Bill Oldenburg. I'm Director of Project Development at New Hampshire DOT, and it's my pleasure tonight to present an overview of the draft 2025 to 34 10-year plan. For further information, there are QR codes and website links shown on the 10-year plan for the 10-year plan survey, and also the 10-year plan documents we'll be reviewing as part of this presentation. We're currently in the middle of the 10-year plan process. The process started last year when the regional planning commissions throughout the state reviewed, ranked, and brought forward candidate projects to be added into the new fiscal year 33 and 34 years that were being added to the 10-year plan. These candidate projects have been drafted and debated amongst the individual RPC communities and presented to the New Hampshire DOT for inclusion into the 10-year plan. We're currently in the Gasset review process phase, where the Gasset Committee, and as Councilor Stevens said, she represents the Gasset today, as well as our DOT Commissioner, present to the public the draft 10-year plan. Inputs gathered at hearings like this, and the 10-year plan is amended by Gasset as necessary based upon the public input. At the end of the Gasset phase, the statewide 10-year plan is submitted to the governor and for review and submission to the legislature for their consideration and approval. Public hearings are held and input considered, and the process is complete, hopefully, in June of 2024, when the 10-year plan is signed into law by the governor. Brief overview of what we'll talk about tonight. The presentation tonight will consist of a high-level overview of funding within the 10-year plan. We'll review the strategies and challenges required to meet a financially constrained 10-year plan. We'll review a funding synopsis of the plan, give a brief overview of the key infrastructure conditions, discuss the RPC priority projects being proposed for inclusion in the 10-year plan. We'll explain the information within the 10-year plan and give a simple 10-year plan 101 type of review of how to interpret the information within the book. Finally, we'll discuss the 10-year plan public input survey, how to find it, and how to take that survey. So from a funding level standpoint, we receive funds from several federal agencies and programs. The Federal Highway Administration for roads and bridges and active transportation infrastructure systems. Federal Highway represents the majority of our funding within the 10-year plan, about 57% of the entire plan. The Federal Transit Administration for public transit systems, Federal Aviation Administration for airport projects and programs, and the Federal Railroad Administration for railroad infrastructure improvements. The IIJA, or the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, was approved in 2022 by Congress and signed into law by the President. It ends or expires in 2026. Within the IIJA are new programs and discretionary grant opportunities. There are new bridge programs that can be used to strengthen our state bridge strategies, but also new programs that allow the use of federal funds on municipal bridges that are off the federal system, which is new for federal funding. There's also new programs to promote electric vehicle usage, protect funds to promote resiliency statewide as well as coastal resiliency, and carbon reduction programs to help promote and improve the environment. On the state funding side, things aren't so bright. State funding relies on the road toll revenue, also known as the gas tax. Travel has just rebounded to pre-pandemic patterns, but it's still down about 4% over predictions in the last 10-year plan. This travel reduction has related to a lower than anticipated toll revenue for the turnpike system. It's also relates to a reduction in revenue for the state betterment spending for our non-federal eligible roadways and bridges, and also a reduction in SB 367 revenue for state paving and bridge projects. Another important component in considering the 10-year plan funding is the added cost of inflation and the escalation of construction material and labor costs in our projects. To take inflation into account, we reviewed recent and historical inflationary costs and adjusted the inflation in the current 10-year plan from 28% to 37% per year for projects within the 10-year plan. This is related to an overall increase in 10-year plan existing project costs of about $100 million within the plan. More recently, we've been seeing very high escalation in construction material costs relating to higher than anticipated bid prices. This, combined with industry-wide construction labor shortages, has increased the cost of labor on our projects. The easiest way to explain this is that we've received more federal funding, but it's been used to really offset the increased construction costs. We have more money, but we're constructing the same number of projects. In order to take advantage of the increased federal funding and meet the challenges of the decrease in state funding, we've developed the following strategies. The IIJA provides federal formula funds of about $234 million per year for the 25-26 years of the 10-year plan. We're assuming level funding at IIJA levels of $234 million per year to continue for the remaining years of the 10-year plan. We have maintained and extended all the programs within the 10-year plan out into the 33, 34 years that are being added at the same funding levels. We're investing in maintenance and preservation of the existing system, keeping good roads good, improving those that we can, and removing bridges from the state red list. We have dedicated $69 million to the new RPC priority projects entering the 10-year plan in fiscal year 33 and 34. Due to the predicted road toll revenue decrease on the turnpike, due to the predicted toll revenue decrease on the turnpike system, we showed delaying certain capital projects within the turnpikes. The F. Everett widening project from Nashua to Bedford, which is currently underway, will see a delay in completion from 2028 out to 2031. There are two more projects yet to advertise that will be delayed in their advertising. The F. Everett Turnpike project from Manchester, exit 6 and 7, will see a delayed start from 2027, which currently planned out to 2032. And the Bow Concord project will, on I-93, will see a delayed start from 2026 to about 2029. That also includes the non-turnpike portion that will be delayed. So Bow Concord is split about $150 million in the turnpike system and $350 million in the federal system. Both of those funding sources would be delayed and start to meet constraint. I apologize for the slide because it's very small and you can't read it, but basically it represents the funding within the 10-year plan. A readable copy of the tables and several other funding charts are within the 10-year plan for your review. In summary, the plan represents a total value of $4.9 billion and represents a $227 million increase over the last 10-year plan. This is a 4.9% increase over the last 10-year plan. The road and bridge mode, which includes federal highway projects, the betterment, the SB 367, and turnpike funding, totals $4.1 billion, or about 84% of the plan. Rail, transit, and airports, shown here as the other modes, have a funding total of about $760 million, or about 16% of the plan. Federal highway funding category is the largest source of funding in the 10-year plan, representing 82% of the federal funding category and about 57% of the total 10-year plan funding. Just a reminder that the federal funding is restricted and prohibited for operations and maintenance use. One component that I'd like to point out is the conversion of the SB 367 paving and bridge funding to debt service payments starting in fiscal year 26. So, sort of in summary, what that means is to accelerate the construction of I-93 from Salem to Manchester, the department took out a TIFIA loan to pay for that work. To help in the repayment of that TIFIA loan, the legislature passed SB 367, which dedicated a 4.2 cent per gallon gas tax increase to pay back that loan. The way the loan repayment was structured, we were able to use the SB 367 revenue on paving and bridge projects totaling about $20 million per year until the debt needed to be paid. The debt payments began in fiscal year 26, so the TIFIA pledged paving and bridge funding is being reduced to zero and starting in 26 and beyond. I mention this because in the reduction in SB 367 TIFIA pledged paving, because it directly affects our ability to pave roads and will affect road condition. In the previous 10-year plan, we invested about $88 million per year in paving. In the current plan, we're investing about $75 million a year, mainly due to the decrease in SB 367 funding. In all, if all things remain the same, the number of road miles paved will decrease from about 400 miles a year to a little over 200 miles a year, represented by the blue line in the top graph. This would relate to a decrease in the fair and good road conditions at the end of the 10-year plan, which is the bold blue line in the bottom graph. One key thing to remember is that SB 367 funding was dedicated to non-federally eligible roadways. So the majority of the roads paved in SB 367 funds can't be paved with federal funds. Our intent is not to allow this condition to change. For comparison purposes, we did a scenario analysis, gap analysis, funding analysis to judge the funding versus pavement condition. The orange lines on both graphs represent adding about $3 million per year into the paving program, and the light blue line represents adding an additional $16 million per year. So you can see that the orange and blue line improve the paving conditions, but in the blue line, $19 million total brings it back up to about with the same condition as we are with the $20 million in SB 367 paving. We currently don't have a solution for this funding shortfall, but it is our goal to pave as many miles as we can and keep the road condition in the good and fair range. On the red-listed bridge side, we're much better off. The top graph represents state red-listed bridges. We have an additional investment in bridges of about $156 million, and we're predicting that we'll be able to maintain the current red list at about the same number over the 10-year plan. So as a bridge is added to the red list, a bridge is removed. So you'll see that that line is pretty flat. The bottom graph represents the municipal red-listed bridges. On the municipal side, we're able to use the new federal funds to aid those communities with red-listed bridges. We currently have about 214 municipal red-listed bridges. 43 bridges are currently enrolled in DOT-funded rehab and replacement programs. With the additional IIJ funding, we were recently added an additional 55 municipal bridges into the program. This will allow us to aid those communities and reduce the municipal red-listed bridges to about 119 at the end of the 10-year plan, almost a 50% decrease in the municipal red-list bridges. Under active transportation, besides road and bridges, we continue to invest in active transportation on our projects. On average, we anticipate investing about $30 million per year on active transportation aspects of our projects. We also have mandated federal programs like the Transportation Alternative Program, Rec Trails, and the CMAQ program, which involve active transportation as a major component. This 10-year plan cycle corresponds to the latest CMAQ application round. The department received 43 applications for about $44 million in available funds. 19 of the projects were EV applications and are currently being reviewed for alternate funding, like the NEVI program and the carbon funds. So the remaining 24 projects represent $40 million in requested funding. So all 24 of the non-EV CMAQ projects are currently being considered for inclusion in the 10-year plan. On the public transit side, we continue to invest in public transit in the amount of about $40 million per year. Some of the highlights of the program include being able to fund 9 mobility managers starting in fiscal year 22 throughout the state. In the 24-25 budget, the legislature increased the state funding by $2.3 million to help offset the state match needed to cover an increase in federal funding. Ridership continues to rebound, though slowly after the pandemic, but some of the challenges that are faced are limited coverage areas, service frequency, and the lack of service interconnection throughout the state. There's an increased need for transit due to the increased aging population in New Hampshire, and the transit providers still struggle to find drivers, especially those with CDL licenses, and have a trouble obtaining the required non-federal match. So what I'd like to do is explain a little bit about the contents that are in the 10-year plan book, what you'll see inside and how to interpret the information. In the front of the book and the plans, you'll find many of the funding and investment charts and graphs that show you how the funding is allocated and the different categories in which the funding is received and planned to be invested. On the project sheets, the project sheets look like this on the screen and contain the information as follows. 1 is the town name and project number associated with the project. Number 2 is the roadway the project is on. 3 is a general description of the intended scope of work. 4 is the category of project, whether it's a standalone project, a programmatic project, or a mandated project. Number 5 is what tier of road the project is on. Number 6 represents when the design or the preliminary engineering begins and how it's funded, as well as the right-of-way and when the construction will begin and how much the construction is estimated for. Number 7 represents the program the project is funded through. Number 8 represents the total project cost. Number 9, are there any comments pertaining to when and how the project was entered into the program? Like on this one, you'll see that it was a regional priority by the Regional Planning Commission and entered in that year. Number 10 represents if there are previous funds assigned to the project in a previous 10-year plan, what the current 10-year plan funding is, and if any of the funding needed to complete the project is outside the current 10-year plan. And those are all totaled for a total project cost at the bottom. So one of the things that we'd like to do is point out some projects that are sort of unique that have been placed into the 10-year plan, and then talk about some of the projects that are local, some of the ones that Dave had talked about that are local to the Salem region. So there's a corridor study implementation project. It's been in the 10-year plan for the last couple cycles. And we've been working with a consultant to develop a model and prioritization process to systematically review transportation corridors throughout the state. The goal is to be able to study the transportation corridors that have the highest needs. The model's been reviewed by the department and with staff at the RPCs. The outcome is a list of corridors that's been discussed by the department and GASSET for final prioritization and actions. In addition, individual corridor studies that are already identified in an approved 10-year plan will be completed as scheduled. So this doesn't supersede or circumvent any of the existing corridor studies. It's also shown a statewide interstate rehabilitation 4R project, as we call it. Numerous locations throughout the state. The interstate highways are over 50 years old. Except for resurfacing, these highways have received little rehabilitation since they were built. These projects rejuvenate large sections of the interstate system, but because of their large cost, typically about $20 million each, the construction for those projects are shown outside the 10-year plan. So what you'll see in the 10-year plan is the design cost. The intent is to have these projects designed and ready on shelf if or when funding is available. Currently in the 10-year plan, there's 3 such projects on I-93 from Franconia to Bethlehem, totaling more than $60 million. And if you ever travel up I-89, over the last decade, we've completed a series of projects in the Sunapee, Grantham, New London area, representative of these type of projects. There's an interstate exit sign renumbering project that's reoccurring in the 10-year plan. This is a requested project by Federal Highway Administration to bring New Hampshire into compliance with national uniform signing requirements. The intent of the project would be to change the exit numbering from being sequential to being based upon the milepost marker mileage. 3 of the projects that are wanted to highlight that are in Salem is a red-listed bridge project, Bridge Street over the Spigot River. That is one of the 55 municipal bridges that we're helping to fund, currently slated for construction in 2027. The Salem 111 Irma Road HSIP project. It's LPA managed, and it's a intersection safety project. That's slated for construction in about 2025. And also the LPA managed rail trail project on Route 28 runs from Main Street to Rockingham Boulevard, about a mile, currently slated for construction in 2029. So we'd love feedback on those projects, plus any others in the area that you see. This is the final slide I have, so thank you. I'd ask that you take our online survey, give your input on how we're doing, what direction we should take in the future, and what infrastructure needs you think we should be focused on. The survey can be found by aiming your phone at the QR code. We'll open the survey page, and you can take it right from your phone, or you can click on the website survey link on the slide, or you can also find a link to the survey on the department's 10-year plan webpage.